Happy Monday, friends. It is 2 weeks to Election Day. Hope you had an absolutely great weekend. I am kind of turning a new page here, as I mentioned yesterday, as we kind of concluded the roundup of last Wednesday's regular council meeting. This is 85 days of videos we have been doing. There are 15 video days left until the election. And it kind of dawned on me that for the Meet the Candidates on Saturday, I prepared answers to a possible 15 questions that could be asked. Now, how did I arrive at 15 questions? Well, the reason why I arrived at 15 questions was because I believe that as I've been knocking on doors and doing the research and thinking about what St. Stephen needs, it really did boil down to 15 major topics, major challenges, major solutions that we need, that St. Stephen is facing, and that your next mayor and council really need to address, either because these things are being forced on us out of necessity or because these things are coming down the pike over the next 3-4 years. And so over the next 15 days, I kind of want to roll this out as a platform. Hey, took 2.5 months, but I knew that in this process of listening and knocking on doors and doing the research and following the council meetings and reading the documents and combing through the bylaws, I knew the right things would bubble up to the surface. I know a lot of you, sometimes it's overwhelming to even understand what's going on in the municipality, and that's why I'm communicating in this way. So, like I said, 15 days of videos, 15 days of really important topics that I think I want to bring to your attention as a priority. And so we might as well get started, because the first one that I want to address today is active transportation. What is active transportation? This is a term that is being used by municipalities who are focusing on increased non-motor vehicle traffic throughout their municipality, specifically to make sure that downtowns and areas of high activity where there's lots of business do get that traffic and that volume they need. So there's kind of two competing visions when it comes to transportation, traditional transportation, of getting cars from A to B as fast as you can and as easily as you can. And then, of course, the other vision is kind of designing a municipality with that active transportation, foot traffic, more activity in town to accommodate people who are not in cars, whether they have a car and don't want to use it, or whether a car is too great an expense for some of the residents in the municipality. So it's kind of, like I said, two visions, and it's like a tale of two cities. Don't want to get all Dickensian on you here, but the first town, you could say, is a place that is prioritizing the car. So a municipality that prioritizes the car, that means, you're trying to get motorists from one place to another as quickly as you can. Most people have cars. Most people will drive through the downtown or out of the municipality as quickly as they can. And the priority is given to roadways, wider roadways for cars, more parking for cars. So parking becomes a priority. How are we going to get more cars in? Where are we going to park them? Because the thinking here is that without accommodating the car, you're just not going to get people in the municipality or in town or in the downtown area that you want. So, of course, once the car becomes a priority, then speeding moving as quickly as you can through the municipality becomes a priority as well. And that means typically that you are going to see less priority on sidewalks. You're going to see less maintenance of sidewalks. You're going to see less priority on biking trails, on foot traffic safety, because all of the money and focus is on the pavement that cars drive on, and the design of the roads that cars drive on, and getting them as quickly as possible, focusing on convenience and speed for motor vehicles. Of course, what this does is contribute to sprawl throughout the municipality. As you have people more dependent on cars, then development is happening outside of the central core area of a municipality. And then what that does in turn, when development is happening outside the central core area, is the municipality then starts to accommodate development outside of the municipal core, which means new pavement and new pipes, which puts the burden on the municipality to pay for those pavement and pipes, brand new infrastructure, to the tune of millions of dollars, of course, and that comes to the taxpayer, which means taxes then need to rise to keep up with all the new infrastructure. So a lot of municipalities are realizing that this is a deadly loop, not just for municipal finances, which all of us take very seriously, but for different levels of income for residents in the municipality. If everybody has a car, if you are only focused on residents who have a car and you assume everyone has a car, then what do you do for seniors who don't like to drive, for families with young children, for people with different mobility issues who are getting around on wheelchairs or walkers or something more slowly in the downtown? Is the downtown accommodating kids who bike to school or walk to school, and daycare centers where the kids are going for a walk? Again, we see all this in St. Stephen. And I think it's important to then follow the other vision. Like I say, if for no other reason of municipal frugality and making sure our taxes stay low, then for all of the other reasons where, tale of another city, tale of another town, as I could say, so it's relevant to St. Stephen, is we start to think about focusing on active transportation, which means instead of roads and wide roads and parking becoming a focus, we are actually thinking about how to increase foot and cycle traffic, non-motorized transportation. And we're looking at our roads and the design of things and saying, how do we prioritize this, as well as being aware that cars do need to get from A to B. So what municipalities are doing when they're focusing on this is they are actually narrowing roadways. And if you're a motorist, then you can think about this. When you're driving, if something is wide and open and flat, then, or even on a downhill, you are going to pick up speed. However, when there's a narrowing happening, when there's trees, not obstructive trees, but trees, there's a signal in your head that you need to slow down. And then when you have on either sides of these roads, you have bike paths, maybe even designated bike paths and walking trails. Again, I went to Beijing 20 years ago, and it was absolutely incredible to see those big wide roads, flat roads, because Beijing is flat as a chessboard, which makes it wonderful to go around on a bicycle. And on the side of every single roadway was a green space with trees and grass, and then designated bike roads, basically. And my wife and I got around Beijing on bicycles for a week, and we're absolutely amazed by how forward-thinking the infrastructure was there, because many people in China do not have a car. And you can almost say, from what I saw, the bicycle was almost as ubiquitous as cars when it comes to how people get around. When I think of a small municipality like ours, my kids, I have a daughter going to high school next year. She will be walking from kind of the Tim Hortons area where I live to the high school. My son walks to the middle school. I see those teenagers walking up and down to school. And it gets kind of precarious, especially when you get north of the high school. A lot of people want to get to the McDonald's. There's no more sidewalks there. And the sidewalk is only on one side of King Street. Of course, if people are trying to get to Tim Hortons, sometimes they dash across the road. You do see a furrow where people are walking on the grass, just the kind of that natural rut, because there's no sidewalk on the other side of the street, which means businesses there aren't quite as accessible. At the superstore, you have to cross. I don't want to go into all the detail on that, but What happens when you start to focus on redesigning roads that are bike and stroller and skateboard and foot friendly is you start to get more traffic and more people traffic, more activity, and businesses do notice an increase in people stopping by, learning about their business, patronizing their business. Because when you're in a car, you're typically just whipping from A to Z. You're driving by, and you are not spending time in and on the businesses that are along your route. Whereas if you've done foot traffic at all, if you walk around, if you're used to that kind of thing, you'll stop, you'll browse, you'll rest, you'll say, do you want to pop in here and have a drink? So it does increase business activity. And then because anywhere there's more activity, I've talked about this in my videos, there is more safety. When you have more people walking and using an area, you have less open drug use, less crime, less loitering, less of those kind of nefarious activities that we do need to focus on in St. Stephen in terms of upping our safety. But that kind of stuff happens in abandoned areas typically. You know, we think about the St. Stephen curling rink where there's lots of complaints around activity going around there, but it's because, again, it's out of sight. There's not people walking around there. I'm just using that as an illustration of a contrast of a place where there's downtown or the waterfront or those kinds of areas. The more non-motorized activity we can get up and down these streets, the better it will be for businesses and for safety. And that's ultimately one of the things we want to tackle. And then, of course, when you talk to developers about infilling housing, mixed use housing, businesses with housing above them on these spaces, there's lots of empty lots when you think of the business improvement area, King Street and Milltown Boulevard. That is the kind of thing we want to see building up, and we will get activity, more business activity, and more safety in those areas. So active transportation is crucial. It's the way of the future. I know a lot of us are attached to our cars. We like our cars. We feel we want the roads to be improved. This is not an either or, but the most forward-thinking municipalities, when I read kind of the strong towns movement and I'm listening to podcasts, I'm listening to municipal developers, people who are designing and strategizing, the way of the future is to accommodate people who do not have cars, be more welcoming to people of all income levels and ages who do not drive. And then, again, you get all those benefits that follow. That's the kind of thing we want to see here in St. Stephen. All right, so that was day 1 of 15. It's a real priority for something that I think we can improve and want to see in St. Stephen, especially with King Street set for a completely new design coming up in the next couple of years, because King Street is a provincial road. It's not municipally managed and funded. And so, we're responsible for plowing and things like that. But in terms of the road itself, the province is going to step in and help us with a King Street redesign. And that's the kind of thing we need to be thinking about, making it accommodating for cars, yes, but then also much more foot traffic activity, which will develop businesses and safety and all the other things I said. All right, that's it for today, friends. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Monday. Join me again tomorrow. BuildUpStStephen.ca. That's where you can take a peek at the rest of my priorities and commitments. Again, bit of a narrowing here because I spent 3-4 months reading, studying, and this is where I think we need to go in St. Stephen. And I'm just wanting you to be informed of what I would bring to the council and to the mayoral chair as we move into the next chapter for St. Stephen. Take care of yourself today and your neighbor, and let's build up St. Stephen together. Cheers.